9 Times Death Missed Lincoln, Episode 8, The Anonymous Letter. No sound, no knock, no cinder, only a folded letter that said, "They're coming for you tonight." And Abraham Lincoln almost didn't believe it, until it was nearly too late. Chapter 1: The Letter with No Hand. April 18th, 1863, 11:46 p.m. The fire in the White House study had burned low. The coals glowed faintly inside the iron grate, casting long shadows against the floorboards. Outside, the capital city lay still, war-tired, fog-covered. An unnatural hush stretched across Pennsylvania Avenue like a woolen blanket. Lincoln was alone. He had sent his secretaries to bed hours earlier. Nicolay and Hay had pleaded for him to get some rest. Even Crook had grown bold enough to suggest it was time to extinguish the lamps. But Lincoln had only smiled, waved him off, and said, "Rest will come when the country finds peace. Until then, I'll keep it company." He sat at the long walnut desk, scribbling lines onto a yellowing legal pad, notes for an upcoming address. But his pen had stopped moving 20 minutes earlier. His hand rested against the edge of the paper, and then something stirred. Not a creak, not a bang, a thump, soft, final, like the sound of a book falling onto thick carpet. Lincoln looked up. Nothing. The room was still, the doors shut, the windows bolted. He stood slowly, walked toward the center of the room, and then he saw it, a single envelope, folded once, resting on the center of the floor, less than 5 feet from his desk. He hadn't seen it fall. He hadn't heard it dropped. But it was there, not sealed, not stamped, just resting, as if it had always been. He stared at it for several seconds, then picked it up. Inside was a note, just one line. "They're coming for you tonight." No signature, no origin, no second page. Just that sentence, in ink just barely dry. He sat back down, examined the paper. It was rough stock, common, cut from ledger paper. The handwriting was precise, almost too precise. It looked familiar, too familiar. He stood again, crossed to the secretary's drawer, pulled out his own writing samples, notes, addresses, even scraps from personal letters. Then compared. The writing matched. Not exactly, but close, terrifyingly close. He turned to the mirror, stared at his own reflection, then back to the note, then said, barely above a whisper, "I didn't write this, but it's my hand." MetaFacts Legends worked with forensic handwriting experts to reconstruct this comparison. Their conclusion: the anonymous note shared over 80% consistency with Lincoln's own script, but included just enough variation to suggest imitation. A left-handed rendering, likely from someone who had studied Lincoln's writing obsessively. Lincoln didn't sleep that night. At 12:22 a.m., he called for Crook. Crook entered quietly, eyes adjusting to the dim light. Lincoln handed him the note. Crook read it, then looked up sharply. "Sir, where did this come from?" Lincoln shook his head. "I found it on the floor." Crook's eyes darted to the windows, the fireplace, the shadows. "No one entered, no one's passed through since I began the watch." Lincoln nodded. "That's what frightens me. They searched the room, found no sign of tampering. No footprints, no disturbance, just the note." Crook examined the envelope. It wasn't carried in by the draft. "It's too heavy." Lincoln stood at the window. "Whoever brought it in didn't come to kill me. Not yet, but the warning. Exactly. Why warn me unless the threat was real?" He stared out at the White House lawn. Or perhaps the warning is the threat. Crook stiffened. "Sir, if they can place this on my desk." "Crook, they're already inside." By dawn, Crook had doubled the patrol. Still, nothing was found. No suspicious movement. No breach. No break-in. Nothing. And yet the note remained. Hay examined it later that day. "It's your writing," he said, "but not my hand." Lincoln replied. "They showed it to Nicolay." He paled. "What do we do?" Lincoln didn't answer. He stared at the note again. Then, after a long silence, "We wait." He didn't eat that day. Didn't write. Didn't speak to anyone except Crook. That evening, he returned to the study. sat at the same desk, laid the note in front of him, and waited. The fire burned. The clock ticked. Nothing happened. At 2:33 a.m., Crook entered, still awake. "Sir, still alive, Mr. Crook." They said no more. The next morning, Lincoln scribbled one line in his personal notebook. "I have been warned. Now I wonder, was I also chosen?" That entry, now held in the MetaFacts Legends archive, has never been made public until now. It ends with a final phrase, added later in pencil: "What kind of man writes his own death?" End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2: The Shadow on the Staircase. April 19th, 1863, 12:14 a.m. The White House was asleep. At least, it was supposed to be. William Crook stood just outside the president's study, his back straight, his mind alert. He'd been on edge ever since the appearance of the anonymous letter the night before. A warning written in Abraham Lincoln's own handwriting but by someone else's hand. Crook couldn't shake the feeling that something unnatural had slipped through the seams of protocol. Inside the room, Lincoln sat by the hearth. The coals were low now, barely giving off light, but he hadn't asked for more wood. He was waiting, not pacing, not writing, just waiting. MetaFacts Legends obtained Crook's personal diary entry from that night. He wrote, "He did not speak, but I felt him thinking so loudly it filled the hallway. There was something about the silence that didn't seem like rest. It felt like bait." At 12:29 a.m., the sound came, barely audible, just one creak, a floorboard near the west staircase. Crook turned immediately. Another sound, not heavy, not hurried, measured, a footstep. He drew his revolver, moved silently down the hallway. He reached the landing, paused. Another creak, this time lower, closer to the servants' corridor that led toward the president's quarters. Crook descended 2 steps. The lamp on the lower floor flickered gently, casting strange, tall silhouettes against the marble columns. That's when he saw it. A shape, not fully formed, just the absence of light. A shoulder, a corner of a coat. Someone standing still at the bottom of the stairs, not moving, not breathing hard, watching. Crook shouted, "Who goes there?" No answer. He advanced. The shadow turned and disappeared around the corner in a fluid motion. Crook followed, but the hallway was empty. He moved room to room, checked each door, nothing. Then he noticed it, muddy footprints on the carpet. Just 2, leading in, but not back out. Crook retraced his steps. The footprints ended at a side door. It was ajar, unlocked. That door had been locked at 9 p.m. He checked it himself. Now, it hung open slightly, just enough to suggest it had been used. He alerted the other guards. They swept the house, every room, every window. Nothing. No sign of a break-in. No valuables missing. No weapon found. But the footprints, they were real, measured, clean, fresh. MetaFacts Legends reviewed the original security logs from that night. In the margin of Crook's own report, someone from the Pinkerton office later wrote, "A break-in without entry, an escape without pursuit, an intruder who left nothing except the suggestion of himself." Back upstairs, Lincoln had not moved. When Crook returned to report, the president listened in silence. Then, slowly, he asked, "Did he say anything?" Crook shook his head. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than a scream. Lincoln turned to the fireplace, stared at the flickering ash. "He's not here to kill me," he murmured. "Not yet." Crook frowned. "Then why come at all?" Lincoln looked down at the note still resting on the table, the same one that had warned him. In his own handwriting, that someone would come, to see if I believed the letter. Crook nodded. "And now, sir," Lincoln answered without hesitation, "now I do." That morning, Nicolay and Hay were briefed. Stanton was notified, though no official investigation was opened. Lincoln refused any public mention. "It's not news," he said, "it's prophecy, and prophecy doesn't sell papers." But privately, he took action. He began locking his door at night, a habit he had abandoned early in his presidency. He also made a second copy of the anonymous note. and filed it himself. Not with the secretaries, but in a hidden compartment of his personal desk. MetaFacts Legends later recovered a copy of this file, with Lincoln's own marginal note. Shadow visited, left no name, no weapon, only truth. The following day, the footprints remained. Someone had attempted to clean him, but the mud had stained the fibers. A servant asked Lincoln if she should replace the carpet. He told her, "No, leave the stain. Let it remind me that belief sometimes arrives dirty." Pinkerton later concluded the intruder had not come to harm Lincoln. Not yet, but they offered no theory for how he had entered or left. One internal memo, previously classified, contained a chilling sentence. "We may not be hunting a man. We may be watching a message that walks." That night, Lincoln refused to sleep in his usual chamber. He moved instead to the sitting room adjacent to his office. A cot was brought in. Crook sat outside. Hay offered to keep watch as well. "No," Lincoln said, "this is not a moment to share. This is a moment to learn." Hay paused. "Learn what, sir?" Lincoln stared out the dark window. "How it feels to wait when you know someone is already inside the house." MetaFacts Legends believes this event, the shadow on the staircase, marked a shift in Lincoln's psychological state. He became more introspective, more fatalistic, more convinced that each breath might be the last. But he did not run. He did not panic. He stayed, and he waited, because that's what leadership sometimes is. Not commanding armies, not giving speeches, but waiting for the next sound, the next step, the next shadow. End of Chapter 2. Perfect. I'll now begin writing Chapter 3, The Ink That Didn't Match. From Episode 8, The Anonymous Letter. This cinematic storytelling script will be over 5,000 words, written in plain English for AI voiceover, and includes immersive historical detail, dramatic twists, authentic character dialogue, and seamless MetaFacts Legends integration. Beginning now, Chapter 3, The Ink That Didn't Match. April 19th, 1863, 11:27 a.m. The morning light crept in slow and uncertain, filtering through the east windows of the White House like it wasn't sure it belonged there. Abraham Lincoln sat at the breakfast table, his coffee untouched, the anonymous note lying flat beside his spoon. Nicolay had been summoned. Hay followed. Crook stood outside the door with folded arms and eyes that hadn't closed in over 20 hours. Lincoln finally spoke. "Tell me what you see." Nicolay picked up the note, careful not to smudge the ink. "I see one line, written by someone who knew how to imitate your hand almost perfectly." Hay leaned in. "Too perfectly." Lincoln raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "I seen you write every day for 2 years." Hay said, "You make mistakes. You hesitate sometimes. The loops are inconsistent. But this looks like someone trying to write like you would if you never blinked." That's when Lincoln stood. "Get me ink, and get me paper." They moved fast. Within minutes, they had samples, 3 pens, 3 inkwells, all standard issue. Lincoln wrote the same sentence as the note. "They're coming for you tonight." Then again, with his left hand. Then again, deliberately slow. Each one was close, but not exact. Hay opened the original note, held it to the window, let the sunlight push through the fibers. "Sir," he said quietly, "this isn't your ink." Nicolay stepped closer. "What do you mean? It's not the same formula. Yours has gold in it. This one doesn't. Look, when the light hits it, it reflects differently. Yours is flatter. This one's slightly oily, almost rushed." Lincoln exhaled. "Then someone brought their own ink to impersonate me. Inside my house." Hay nodded. "Or wrote it elsewhere, and knew where to place it." MetaFacts Legends consulted forensic ink analysts who confirmed this detail. Inks used in the White House during 1863 were typically iron gold-based, common among federal correspondences. The anonymous note used a carbon black formula with trace elements of gum arabic, a civilian blend. Not regulation issue. Someone had brought the message with them. That same afternoon, Lincoln summoned a chemist, Silas Pomeroy, from the Bureau of Military Chemistry. Pomeroy examined the note under magnification. This was written within the last 12 hours. He said, possibly even last night. Could it have been a servant? Hay asked. Pomeroy shook his head. Unlikely. The pen pressure is firm. Controlled. The hand practiced. Whoever wrote this has written with intent before. Crook stepped forward. You're saying it was a professional? Pomeroy didn't answer directly. He just looked at the president and said, I'm saying it wasn't someone who stumbled in. It was someone who planned to be here. Lincoln stared at the note again. Then the message was more than a warning. It was a performance. Hay whispered. No, Lincoln said. It was an invitation. That evening, Lincoln refused dinner. He returned to the study, opened his journal, and wrote, I wonder if this is what prophecy feels like. Not clarity, but imitation. Someone wrote my death in my voice, but left the ink behind to remind me I did not author it. He set down the pen, stared at the fireplace. MetaFacts Legends reviewed Pinkerton files from April 1863. One internal memo warned of a man seen near the White House on the night of April 18th, carrying what appeared to be a document satchel, departing east on foot, but disappearing behind Lafayette Square before he could be trailed. No sketch, no name, only the description. Tall, thin, brown gloves, limp on the left foot. That detail, left foot limp, matches a record from a discharged Confederate courier captured near Manassas in 1862. His name was never confirmed, but he had carried falsified military orders in General McClellan's handwriting. When interrogated, he said, imitation is the first step toward prophecy. That phrase would resurface later, in a more chilling context. But on that day, inside the executive mansion, Lincoln sat in silence. The note remained on his desk. He did not file it. He did not burn it. He kept it in his breast pocket. Hay asked him why. Because whoever wrote it thinks it ends with me, and I want to show them that I'm still turning the pages. Crook placed a second revolver near the fireplace. Just in case, he said. Lincoln didn't respond. That night, a storm blew through Washington. Rain fell hard, lightning cracked above the dome, and in the shadows outside, a figure stood for nearly 9 minutes beneath a maple tree, watching the window to Lincoln's study. When lightning struck again, he was gone. Only a boot print remained, in the mud, half sunken, with a heel worn out on the left side. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Man with No Appointment. April 20th, 1863, 8:47 a.m. The White House was moving, not with urgency, but with weight. Aides stepped quicker, guards scanned more deliberately, and deep inside the residence, Abraham Lincoln reread a line written in ink that wasn't his, in handwriting that almost was. They're coming for you tonight. The note sat unfolded on his desk. Nearby, the fire had died out, but the chill remained. He had not slept well. Neither had Crook, nor Hay, nor Nicolay. And yet, despite the sleeplessness, Lincoln had issued a specific instruction to his staff. Do not change the schedule. Do not cancel the morning meetings. We don't run from shadows. We study them. That's why, at 8:59 a.m., the outer receptionist allowed a man through the east wing gates. He was unremarkable. Average height, well-dressed, polite. He gave his name simply, Mr. Norris. He held no papers, no credentials, no military stripes, no congressional connection. He said he had a message for the president, and when asked for an appointment, he smiled and said, "He's expecting me." The receptionist, uncertain, flipped through the day's ledger. "No, Norris. I'll need to speak with Secretary Nicolay." She said, "Of course," he replied, still smiling. She left briefly to check, but when she returned, he was gone. No footprints, no signature in the visitor log, no record of arrival, just a single chair in the reception hallway, pulled slightly away from the wall and still warm. MetaFacts Legends recovered the ledger page from April 20th, 1863. A faint smudge of graphite appears next to the 9 a.m. line, unreadable, but present. Experts confirmed the smudge was not part of the page's printing. It had been erased. Possibly a name. Possibly a warning. At 9:12 a.m., Lincoln was informed. Crook entered the study, shut the door softly. "Sir," a man attempted entry, said you were expecting him, then disappeared before verification. Lincoln didn't look up. What was his name? Norris. That made Lincoln pause. He looked to the fire, then to the coat draped over the chair, reached into its inner pocket, pulled out the anonymous note. "Read it again. They're coming for you tonight." He turned the page over. There, scribbled in pencil, faint, erased, but still legible, was a single word. Norris. He stared at it. Crook stepped forward. "Sir, we're increasing patrols." "No," Lincoln interrupted. "That's not the point." "What is?" "He came to be seen, but no one saw him." Lincoln nodded. "Exactly. He wanted to prove he could stand just outside our reach and vanish." "Then why not strike?" "Because striking is final," Lincoln said, "and he wants the anticipation to do more damage than the bullet." That afternoon, Hay began searching records, military, civil, internal directories. There were 5 men named Norris currently registered within federal departments. None were in Washington. None had White House access. None resembled the man described by the receptionist. At 2:33 p.m., a second message was found. Not delivered, not mailed, just placed in the inner pocket of Lincoln's coat again, folded. Precise. This one read, "You missed me, but I saw you." Same ink, same paper, same handwriting. But this time, one difference. The signature. N. Just a single letter. MetaFacts Legends engaged in comparative signature analysis using over 700 Civil War-era documents. The letter N from this note bore remarkable resemblance to the cursive signature of Nathaniel Trask, a Confederate courier captured and presumed dead in 1862. Presumed, not confirmed. Trask was known for his ability to forge Union dispatches, mimic official seals, and imitate commanding officer signatures. He had escaped prison once, been recaptured, and then allegedly died of exposure. But no body was ever documented. Lincoln read the message twice, then set it down and said, "The ghost has a name now, or at least, he wants me to think so." That night, he sat by the fire with the letter and a blank piece of paper. He wrote back, "You saw me, then you saw a man still breathing. I do not fear you, but I respect your precision." He folded the reply, tucked it in the same coat pocket where the first message had been found, and left it there, not expecting it to be taken, but waiting to see if it would. The next morning, it was gone, and in its place, another reply, "You respect precision, I respect patience." Crook searched every inch of the residence. Guards doubled again. Every servant questioned. No one saw anyone, no one knew anything. Lincoln simply said, "He is either already dead or already inside. Either way, he does not need doors." MetaFacts Legends calls this phase the correspondence window. Between April 20 to 24, Lincoln received 4 letters in total. None arrived by conventional means. All reference movements, thoughts, or objects known only to Lincoln and his closest circle. He never spoke publicly about them. Only once, to Hay, he admitted, "It's not just my life that's being hunted. It's my time." Hay didn't understand. "Your time?" Lincoln nodded. "He isn't trying to end me. He's trying to make every breath between now and then smaller. He wants me to fear the waiting more than the end." Hay swallowed. "And is it working?" Lincoln looked out the window. The same staircase from 3 nights before now bathed in sunlight. "Yes," he said, "but only a little." End of chapter 4. Chapter 5: The Fire That Almost Lit. April 21st, 1863, 10:01 p.m. It began with warmth, or rather, the absence of it. The White House heating system, rudimentary and prone to failure, had sputtered all day. The early spring cold clung to the halls like fog, thick in corners, gathering at the soles of boots and under desks. Fireplaces were lit in nearly every major room, stoked by servants and left to burn low through the evening. In the president's private study, The hearth had not been touched since early afternoon. Lincoln preferred it that way. Let the cold keep me alert, he'd told Hay, but something was wrong that night. Crook noticed it first, a smell, not smoke, not burning, resin. Faint, sweet, unmistakable. At 10:03 p.m., he stepped into the study, nodding once as Lincoln looked up from a folio of casualty reports. "Something's off," Crook said. Lincoln nodded. "I smell it too." They checked the fireplace. Ashes cold, no flame. Then Crook knelt, touched the grate, and pulled back quickly. The metal was warm, not red hot, but not dormant. "This hasn't burned all day," Lincoln said. "Then someone lit it while we weren't looking." Crook opened the flue. A faint wisp of smoke escaped, old, lingering, not active. Then something caught his eye in the far back corner of the hearth. A small bundle, wrapped in cloth. Crook reached in with the fire iron, drew it forward, unwrapped it. Inside, a tightly rolled wick soaked in turpentine, and beneath it, a glass vial of powdered resin. MetaFacts Legends consulted with 19th century pyrotechnics experts. This combination, resin, turpentine, and a cotton wick, was a common fire-starting accelerant during the Civil War. It did not ignite on its own, but with one spark, could cause rapid combustion and spread. The bundle had been hidden, positioned carefully just above the coal bed, tucked under coal ash. All it needed was a flame. Crook stood slowly. This wasn't carelessness, he said. This was a fuse waiting for a match. Lincoln didn't flinch. "And what time was the match scheduled?" They searched the room. No prints, no tracks, but outside the window, pressed into the dirt, was the faint outline of a heel. Same leftward drag as before. Crook filed a report immediately. Stanton was notified. Pinkerton dispatched 2 men by midnight. One searched the interior for tempering. The other climbed the roof. What he found would not make the morning reports. Directly above the chimney flue, placed on the roof tiles, was a matchbook. 3 matches missing, 2 still inside, wrapped in twine. MetaFacts Legends secured a copy of the original Pinkerton memo. The handwriting, though unconfirmed, closely matches that of Operative Kate Warren, then serving in a covert civilian intelligence capacity in Washington. At 12:34 a.m., Lincoln received a visitor, Pinkerton himself. He arrived without an escort, soaked from rain, and carrying a briefcase. They met in the study. "This was not meant to explode," Pinkerton said. "It was meant to smolder, to catch, to consume slowly." Lincoln folded his hands. "That sounds familiar." It was precision, calculated, someone with time. Lincoln opened his desk drawer, removed the anonymous letters, laid him out. "Same man, I can't say, but if it is, it's a long game. Long enough to watch the house catch fire from the inside." Pinkerton paused. "Mr. President, I believe this was a test." "Of what? Your faith in your own security, your patience, or your sanity?" "He failed," Lincoln said. "No," Pinkerton corrected. "You passed." Lincoln smiled faintly. "One of us is going to run out of time." The following morning, Crook found something new. In the hallway outside the study, a single match, unused, placed upright against the baseboard. Balanced perfectly. No soot, no charring. Just the suggestion. Lincoln picked it up, held it between thumb and finger. "He wants me to see how close we are." He turned to Crook. "Tell me, would you rather be killed suddenly, or know it's coming?" Crook hesitated. "Suddenly." Lincoln nodded. "Then I envy you." That night, the wick and resin were removed and stored. The fire remained cold. Lincoln did not light it again, even when the frost returned. MetaFacts Legends uncovered an unpublished note written by John Hay in late 1863. It read, "The president has not lit a fire in his study for months. He says he doesn't need the warmth, but I believe he fears giving the shadow even a spark." And still, the letters continued, shorter now, sharper, each with a single line. April 21st, you turn the key, but the room still burns. April 22nd, I see your desk, your coat, your hesitation. April 23rd, I almost lit the fire. And then, April 24th, I will not warn again. That day, Lincoln sat with Crook, the final note in hand. What do we do? Crook asked. Lincoln stared at the page. We leave the matches in the drawer, and we keep breathing. Crook shook his head. You're not afraid. I am, Lincoln said. But I've learned that fear has no power over a man who has already made peace with fire. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The President Who Stayed Awake. April 24th, 1863, 11:58 p.m. There was no fire in the White House study that night. No lamp, no candle, just the moonlight bleeding through the tall windows. The sound of the clock ticking at the far end of the room. And Abraham Lincoln, awake. He sat in a high-backed chair with his coat still on. Collar unfastened, one hand resting on the armrest, the other on the note folded in his lap. The fourth note, I will not warn again. It had arrived, like the others, without sound, without sender, just there, inside his coat pocket, as if the threat had always lived in the lining. Crook was outside the door. Hay was down the hall. Nicolay was asleep. But Lincoln, he would not close his eyes. Not tonight, not anymore. Sleep, he had told Hay earlier, is where I forget the danger. Staying awake is where I understand it. MetaFacts Legends later verified a private memo written by John Hay, never published in any official correspondence. It read, the president stayed awake the whole night. I heard no steps, no fire lit, only silence, and the occasional turn of a page that had nothing written on it. Because that's what Lincoln had done. Sat in the dark, holding the last note, staring at blank paper, waiting for sound, for signal, for an ending. He hadn't told anyone, but he believed that night would be the end. And in that silence, he thought about the letters, the handwriting, the ink, the shadows. But mostly, he thought about how it had begun. Not with war, not with rebellion, not with Booth, but with a letter written in his own hand by someone else. MetaFacts Legends identified a fifth note, never acknowledged in the official record, found in a collector's private vault in upstate New York in 1991. Dated April 25, 1863, 3:10 a.m., signed only with the letter N. You did not sleep. That was wise, because I stood outside your door. I wanted to see if you were ready. You are, so I will choose another time, but not another place. Lincoln never shared that note. Not with Crook, not with Hay. He folded it gently, placed it between the pages of his copy of King Lear, and underlined a line in pencil. Men must endure their going hence, even as they're coming hither, at 4:12 a.m. He stood, walked to the mirror, looked at his reflection for a long time, then said quietly, I am ready. Crook entered at dawn, found him seated again, eyes open, expression blank. The president smiled faintly. You're early. I never left. Crook replied. They said nothing more. That day, Lincoln asked for 3 meetings to be rescheduled, all minor, and then he requested a fresh black coat. Not the morning one, not the ceremonial one that fit well enough to die in, but modest enough to forget. When Hay asked why, Lincoln said, I seen the end coming too many times to keep dressing for safety. Then for what? Lincoln turned to him. For truth. That evening, he added a note to his personal papers. MetaFacts Legends has confirmed it was never sent. It reads, if I fall, let it be said that I stayed awake when it mattered most. That I did not run from the silence. That I waited for the hand I could not see, and did not flinch. And then, the letters stopped. No note on April 25th. No match on the floor. No shadow on the staircase. Just stillness, and the understanding that whatever game had been played was now over. He had passed. The president had stayed awake, and so they chose another night, another moment, another stage, another curtain, but the same ending, because the man who had waited in silence would soon walk into applause. Into light, into a theater. Episode 9, The Theater of Death. The final night, the final seat, the final act of the man who stayed awake too long to be surprised. Coming next on MetaFacts Legends. Watch the finale in the full series playlist.